7 o'clock.
Sunday! From the race plate 72 U.S. 30 dragster, the Coca-Cola bottlers of Chicagoland present the Mr. Chevrolet USA Super Dual Bike Car Showdown. From Pennsylvania, it's three-time national champion Jungle Jim Lieberman. From Dallas, Texas, Martin Martin, Dragon Vega. From Alabama, the bold one, Bobby Wood. From New Jersey, Bruce Weston's fantastic USA 1.
So awesome. The greatest one ever, man. That's the greatest. That's the greatest.
It gets me all pumped up. It's not officially Wednesday until that happens.
Until those cars go by, it's not live chat. There it is. Now I'm ready.
Well, hey,
Yep.
just as today, do I notice a little pink? Did I look a little pink to you?
Yeah, me too.
I got some of that spring sun, and it just cooked me up.
I did too. I went out and mowed the lawn, and it was hot out, and I got a little bit of
Already, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is it's been like 80, 40, 60, 20, 80 again. It's like it doesn't know what season it is.
Yeah, it's drunk. Go home, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's it. You're out of here. We're cutting you off. But
Yeah, tonight's going to be. It was 39 degrees last night, and then Thursday night's going to be 63 at night. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's supposed to be 38 this tomorrow evening, and then it's supposed to be a high of 69 though tomorrow after. It feels like Southern California where you have like this freaking 30 or 40 degree temperature swings in the summer. Mm-hmm. So, well, all right.
Hey,
well,
before
let's
we get going, just letting everybody know we're about halfway through the Slant Daily Garage at yahoo.com messages. So we got more to go. So if you haven't heard back and you put a message in, we're still working through those.
I sent you porn.
Oh well, that means that's what.
It's slowing you down. It's
slowing us down.
All right. Well, hey, Danny Boyd's in here, Mr. John Wilburn, the one-eyed cat, and these guys are talking about the thumbnails. The one-eyed cat says he loves the thumbnails, right?
Oh, that's the greatest thumbnail.
Yeah. If you guys haven't seen it, well, I'm sure you have if you're watching this. The Chips thumbnail. It was kind of a last minute thing. I've been doing the automotive duos, and I was kind of kicking around what to do, and I'm trying to. There's certain ones that I won't do, right? Like the Dukes of Hazzard. I won't do the Dukes of Hazzard right away unless I have somebody that can fill in. Because in my personal opinion, it can't just be Bo and Luke Duke up there. It's got to be Bo and Luke Duke and Roscoe, right? And we need somebody good for Roscoe and Enos, right? So like. As soon as we nail down a guest.
John Wilburn.
Well, Wilburn would be, he called me today and I was telling him about this and he was like, no, dude, I'm the best boss hog there was.
Oh,
right? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
But I think you got to have Roscoe and Enos in there and no one wants to be Tom Wopat. I mean, he is one of them woke fellas and nobody wants to be that dude.
Yeah.
So it's just the Bo and Bo Duke show. So I went with the Chips this go round. Like I said, the previous go round I was kicking around. BJ and the Bear is one of the ones I've been kicking around. The Speed Buggy, the cartoon from like 1969 Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Yeah, right. I remember that was great.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Let's see. Yes. There was another one I was thinking of. Oh dang it! It's Knight Rider. I was going to do Knight Rider, and I was actually going to make Meyer your face the front of Kit.
That's so awesome, dude.
Yeah. All right. So we're up to 37 folks in here. Uncle Squirrel's in here. He's blaming squirrels again. Mopar Man 1978. Big Belly Racing. Good evening. Dallas, Professor P, and everyone. He wanted to make sure he got everyone on there.
Awesome.
Fab Race Mod Repeat, Chris Cox from Northeast Dragway, otherwise known as Speed Oasis LLC, or your friendly neighborhood Fab Race Mod Repeat guy on YouTube. Scarlet, the Four-Eyed Cuda. Hello, is this thing on? You're on the wrong end. If you're having to type that in, there's a problem. Let's see. Frankenstein C20. You know, this guy is my favorite underdog from last year's No Name Nationals. When we announced that it was going to happen, it was in January, right?
Yep.
And then, like, this guy was all in. So let's say, like, March, maybe April. He pulls out. He says, hey, I'm having all kinds of medical issues. I'm not going to be able to finish the truck. And he got his subs. You know, he already had all of his subs. And he was just going to bow out. And it was like, oh, that sucks to see that happen. And then all of a sudden, literally, I show up at the No Name Nationals one day. And it was Thursday? I don't think it was Thursday. He might have showed up on Thursday, but I think it was Friday. And I pulled in the gate from going somewhere, and there was Frankenstein C20, and I'm like, what in the world? This guy had no front end on the whole truck, and it wasn't running when he stopped. And he literally got all of his medical conditions under control and freaking knocked the truck out and showed up at the No Name Nationals anyway.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. He's my favorite underdog story from last year. Okay, Scarlet the Four-Eyed Cuda. Let's see. One-Eyed Cat. Colleen Tebow's in the house. A-Cove. Greetings and salutations. I'm already getting behind, aren't I? Okay, Ron English. Kevin. In case you didn't know, he doesn't need a last name because, well, he's Kevin. Yeah.
Kevin. Awesome.
Yeah. Perfect. Twisted Mopar Garage. Two Hacks Garage. Hey, there's Two Hacks. I posted a picture of what you sent me from last year of Larry T-Bird in preparation to go to the No Name Nationals on the AHRA Facebook page. And there was a lot of people like, dude, this is one cool looking freaking T-Bird. But just to let you know, it's up there. And I don't think you do the book. I don't think he does Facebook. I know his old man saw it, so. Okay, Danny Boyd says he's in the house. Jason's Garage is here. And it's been a while since I talked to Jason. I used to jump in the lives with him and Dr. Art last year on the Monday evening lives. And I've just been so freaking swamped. Kevin says it's still snowing there.
What?
Where the hell you live in, Alaska?
Right.
Well, actually, I think, didn't Iowa or Minnesota just get some snow?
Yeah.
Like recently?
Yeah.
That sucks.
That does suck.
Yeah.
It's still snowing over there in California, too, and some of that.
Screw them. Screw them. They deserve it.
They deserve it. Snow down.
And snow out all them liberals.
That's
all right. So Junkyard D is in the house. Good evening, peeps. See, Story. Castori? I always murder this every time. I'm just going to guess. C.S. Torreri. We'll go with that one.
Yeah.
Let's see. And Greg McDonald's here. Starsky and Hutch. Oh, you liked the Starsky and Hutch one, did you? That one was cool. I already did that one. Wait, maybe he's not seeing that one. Let me see. Yeah, if you go look at another live, I did the Starsky and Hutch. That was literally like the first one I did, I think.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. And it looked corny and flaky. This one actually looks corny and campy and all that in one, but it looks like it could almost be a legit picture, right?
Yeah.
It really is just me cropping faces and putting them right over the other face. I mean, I spent no time. Look at Ponch's neck. Shane's neck blends into Ponch's neck. It's like literally contrast 100%, right? Difference.
It's so awesome. I'm looking at it. It's just great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, hey, that's an awesome run right there. Two Hacks Garage, Bandit and Snowman. I think I'm going to have to do that one. Yeah, that one would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're gonna
here's
Frog.
another one. Danny Boyd saying 2-lane blacktop. That would be bitching too. Make them black and white.
Yeah.
Hit it with 3 yards. Is that what he says?
Yeah.
3 yards?
Motherfucker, you guys have an automobile race.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was at the beginning of the movie.
Yep. And that was out at the island, wasn't it? That was the Brotherhood of Street Racers.
Yeah, he was
LA.
going up against the Cuda, the Hemi Cuda.
Yeah, and who was the car that ran before him? Oh, Willie Robinson's car ran before
Willie.
him.
Yeah,
Big Willie.
The winged car, yeah.
Yeah. Man, and what was funny is it was him and his wife both were big into the street racing scene. And I want to say I saw Big Willie's Superbird, because I think that's what it is. It's not a Daytona, is it? I guess it's a winged car.
Yeah, it's
right?
winged. That's why I just said I don't remember which one it was.
Well, it was cream colored, and I think all the Daytonas were black with a red stripe, weren't they? The first year.
I don't know that
Okay.
history on that. I just know that the Daytonas were more straight up and down, where the Superbirds were more laid back.
Well, they had his car unrestored. They pulled it out of a backyard in South Central LA and had it up for display. I want to say at like a Hot Rod reunion, like maybe 2009.
Oh wow!
But let's see. David James is in the house. Wendy English is here. We got the entire English family in here.
Nice.
Hippie Miller. Well, so Danny Boyd's saying that Iowa is AWOL backwards, right? In lowercase. All right, Dust Devil Garage is in here. Tom Brown. So, well, he's got our first question of the evening. Okay, so will an engine make max torque at the same RPM no matter what the throttle position is at?
Technically, yes, but it's going to be a lot less. You know,
It'd run out of air at a certain point if you don't have it open all the way.
That's correct, exactly. But the engine's going to make, because it's work. So the engine's designed to make X amount of work. It's just going to take it longer to get there. But it's, as far as the horsepower, that's going to happen at a different. But the work, the torque should keyword should be at the same RPM no matter where the throttle position's at, because it's just done by work.
Huh. And that never really crossed my mind. It's always 5250 where those two cross, and that's always essentially peak torque.
Well, yeah, it's usually somewhere around there, but it depends on the camshaft, obviously. But it's going to be in that same type of area somewhere. But yeah, because torque.
Well, because the reason why that always happens is because the horsepower is a mathematical equation of torque, right?
That's right.
It doesn't really measure horsepower; it measures torque, and then it just has a mathematical reference.
Yeah, it's basically torque and RPM, and then that gives you your horsepower. And then so that's the whole idea, is that whenever you get these things that say you're going to make X amount of more horsepower, no, what you're going to do is you're just going to be able to carry that torque longer in the RPM, so therefore you gain horsepower.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And you know what's really funny is if you ever went and played with fuel curves, like in a carburetor, it's really easy to play with fuel curves. You can fatten up the fuel curve, and it'll have a gazillion foot-pounds of torque right off of idle, right?
Yeah.
If it's really fat. And then it falls on its face the higher the RPM you go, because it just continues to essentially get fatter and fatter, right?
Yeah. You know that Joe Sherman used to tell me, you time for torque and you carburate for horsepower.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he would basically, how he used to tune Sherman's car, Steve's, he would go out there and he would run 100 foot, and he would just keep turning the timing up until it basically stopped, basically accelerating in a 100 foot mark or 60 foot time. And then he would start playing with the carburation, and that's how he used to set up his Camaros back when he used to run all the, match racing back in the day. When he had like the fastest Camaro around, or whatever it was. 350. I think he had the fastest 350.
Yeah, he did have the fastest 350. Yeah. And because he had, was that the Camaro? That was a Camaro, right?
I think it was the Camaro, at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, makes sense. When I did this super stock 350 Buick, and it is like the opposite of a Chevrolet small block. It's like really small bore and really big stroke, right? Yeah. And it's like the opposite of the spectrum for making horsepower. It's the wrong combination altogether. And I put that 950 carburetor, and everybody's like, it won't even run. That thing's going to be a pig. Man, that thing is so snappy. Yeah. I don't think it matters how big the carburetor is, to be honest with you.
It's all about pressure drop. And I did a whole thing on that too. Like on my Slant 6, I put a 500 CFM and a 600 CFM on there, and it runs better at the 600 CFM. Go figure, huh?
And I'll tell you something. Here's my interesting theory on it. Okay? Because the bore is so small, the valves are constantly shrouded. Then the intake itself, because the valves are constantly shrouded, has to make up the difference in airflow, right?
Yep.
So what happens is the intake has to flow better, and if it doesn't flow better than the shrouding around the valves, it becomes a bottleneck. And then your carburetor is a bottleneck. It is 100% a bottleneck. That's what its job is.
Yeah.
It's a bottleneck. When it is wide open throttle is when it should never be a bottleneck. And what happens is when you go to those small bore, non-ideal runner combinations, that when you take the carburetor and you open it wide open throttle, it eliminates every bottleneck in the entire intake system, with the exception of the shrouding of the valves and the intake runner, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what improves the performance of it 100%. Well, not 100%. That's what improves the performance. The bigger the carburetor, the less restriction, the better it actually runs.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Okay. Let's see. One-eyed cat doing good. Okay. He's just talking about... let's see if we can catch up. Okay. Tom Brown says, what was the original name of the movie with the guys with the Dodge? And he had to put the drivetrain into a Willys and race an Olds Cutlass. Oh, I seen that movie.
Yeah, wasn't that like Hot Rod 1942? The guy put it.
I remember him having to put that into a Willys.
I think that was Hot Rod. I think it's Hot Rod 1942. I think. I don't know.
So, Dust Devil Garage is saying he wants to start the Brotherhood of Street Freaks.
Right? Yeah. He has the perfect car for it too, man.
Ah, well, like the 80s Street Freak thing.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is going to make a comeback, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it was cost-effective hot rodding. The days of the Chip Foose mobile are done. Done. Until they figure out how to make the economy come back around, you're going to have the jalopy specials, the muscle rat rods. All of that stuff is going to be what's here for now. Until everybody can get a fair shake and have some kind of extra coin in their pocket, that's what's going to be happening. People are still going to be hot rodding. It's just going to be the low buck side of it. You know, the Boyd Coddingtons and the Chip Fooses, they're going to have a tough time making ends meet.
Yeah, actually, it was called. It's not Hot Rod 1942. It's Hot Rod 1979. That was the movie.
I have seen that. Seen that.
Yep.
Oh, you know what? That's actually on YouTube. That's where I saw it at.
Yeah,
that movie's
that's
on
where
YouTube.
I saw it too. Yeah, in fact, that's where I was like, man, I just watched that movie. It's on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. So Danny Boyd says most NA mods will change horsepower a lot more than they affect torque.
Yeah, they just carry torque longer. He's exactly right. So
well, you pick it sooner or later, right?
Yeah, it just happens later, so you can carry it out. It doesn't fall off nearly as fast. So therefore, you can carry it out higher in the RPM, hold more torque farther in the RPM. So therefore, it's going to create horsepower because that's the mathematical formula.
So Uncle Squirrel's breaking up something interesting here. The odd thing about playing with nitrous would be the sooner you hit the button in the RPM scale, the more foot-pounds of torque you produce, no matter what horsepower level the nitrous kit is at. That's correct, 100%.
Yeah, because cylinder pressure. Yeah,
right, and that's what I was just going to say. It's all based on cylinder pressure. This is where I used to capitalize on nitrous oxide because what happened was I had my 88 Thunderbird. It was a 302. It was a street driver, had air conditioning and cruise control and the whole 9 yards. And then I had my Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde nitrous kit, right? And you go to the track, and I'd turn it on, and I'd spray that sucker out of the hole. And I'd have a 2,500 RPM stall converter, and the reason for it was the engine would flash faster than the nitrous could come on, right?
Yeah.
Would flash that converter. And at least it came on at 2,500. I sat down and did the math on this you remember when desktop dyno was a thing where you could go buy that like for $20 anywhere?
Yeah, now it's free, but yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's free.
Oh, well, I still have copies of all that stuff.
Okay.
I sat down and did the desktop dyno run after run after run after run with nitrous on it because it allows you to do that. I want to say the Dyno 2000 had the nitrous setups on there. And because I had the early DOS nitrous or dyno desktop dynos set up. Well, anyway, you could put the nitrous on there, and it always made a humongous amount of torque. But he's right. The sooner you did it, the more torque it made. Here's the problem. There will be a limitation on your engine because it will either A, detonate, or B, break something, right? And I was using a 302 Ford, which is flimsy and has a really small main bearing. And you go whacking that thing with a 150 shot at 1,000 RPM, and it's making, I don't know, by itself, it's probably making 300 foot-pounds of torque, and then you throw another 300 at it or 400 at it, and now you're twisting cast cranks, actually breaking cast cranks, or splitting blocks, or here's was the thing that I had a problem with just leaving at 2,500, spitting U-joints out, like you got a mouthful of marbles, right? This thing would eat U-joints once a week.
Speaking of that, you know that I started my putting my engine, my old small block, on the stand, and I started opening up ring gaps.
All right. Now you're going to spray it, huh?
I'm going to spray it. I'm only going to do a single kit. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to say anything more than that. It's going to be a plate system. It's going to be a nice, simple plate system. But yeah, I'm gonna spray it. And I'm going with 30 thousandths on the top ring and 34 on the second ring.
Huh. See, so Twisted Mopar Garage says, I run my alcohol carb for heat and mile an hour. I want to see 25 to 30 degrees in heat on a pass. Jet it till it starts cooling down, loses mile an hour. That's alcohol. And that's exactly how I was taught to do it. I bought when I was doing that, I was crewing for a guy who had a front engine dragster in Australia when I lived out there. And I had the little handheld temperature sensor that you use for an RC car.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To check the head temp. To do the same thing. That's what they do on the RC cars. So I started doing that with that methanol dragster. And man, because you put your hand on the head and it wouldn't even get hot for like a few minutes. It would slowly build heat.
Yeah.
And that's when you'd want to run it. But the sooner you could get it up to temp and then not get hot is when it would actually run better. Right? The sooner because the oil, well, that's not entirely true. I guess if you let it run for a long time, heat is actually what makes horsepower. Heat does, right?
In the cylinder head, yes. Heat in the cylinder head.
And you want your oil to be warm, but the block to be cool. So the air coming in is cool, and then the oil is thin as it's going to get, right? That's the ideal situation. That's why if you ever seen like a true serious heads-up drag racing class, and if it's not top fuel, okay, they'll start the cars up in the pits and they'll let them run up generally up on jack stands. Let the rear end, leave it in gear with the tires turning, right? Yeah. And that's turning the transmission, the differential, the whole 9 yards, getting all the fluids up to temperature. And then you shut it off, you let it cool down for 20 minutes and run the water pump the whole time. The water pump and fan, and put your battery charger on it. And that's going to be the best thing you can possibly get out of it. And it will be guaranteed the fastest pass you make that day in the same conditions. Right?
Yep.
But that's just, that's how you do it, I guess. Okay, so Uncle Squirrel says it's a mathematical equation. Torque is what actually you're measuring. The horsepower, there is literally a variance. I must be way behind.
You are.
Okay. Already? How's this
yeah.
possible? Okay, Tom Brown says was watching DV's vid on Cam Centerline, and I've been messing with all my combos on my desktop dyno, and wow, it makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the timing of all of your events. Cam Centerline changes all the event timing.
Yeah,
all
the
of
intake cylinder. Yeah, it changes. Moving it up, just your lobe separation angle, and then where you put the ICL, the intake center line. It really makes a difference. I mean, you're gonna, as far as advancing or retarding, you're not gonna see much more than like say 20 or 30, horsepower. I would say more like 15 to 20. But yeah.
See, this guy was on it too. Kevin. That's why his name is Kevin. He doesn't need a last name.
Yeah.
He was on it. All right. Let's see. Oh, man. Frankenstein C20 brings up a good question. 700R4 pan gasket, cork or rubber gasket?
Neither one.
They make a black paper one.
Yes, get the black paper one. Absolutely. Yeah. Either one of those two are going to leak, regardless. You'll never get them to seal.
Well, and here's the thing. The cork will actually work on older transmission fluids, right? Today's newer stuff,
it'll wick right through.
No chance. It starts weeping. Let's see here. Mopar Man 1978. Did you ever see the 80s high school movie with Michael J. Fox that drove the supercharged Valiant Slant 6?
I did not.
Me neither. I didn't know that even existed. I watched a movie not too long ago. It was a car movie. We'll do like the car movie. The guy was like a murderer or something. I don't remember what it was. But he drove he was like, my super stock Dart. He's got a BO29 Dart, right? And it has license on it. He's driving on the street. And I'm like, that would have never happened. Yeah. And all the guys I was watching the movie with on the ship, they're like, well, how do you know that? And I said, because that car doesn't even have a fucking VIN tag. It's like you couldn't even get a license plate on it.
It's got a build on the side, like in the door jamb, but there's no VIN number up on top.
Well, it also has that placard, I think, that says this vehicle is not for highway use.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. Okay. Oh, well, that's something that I didn't know. Both Willie and his wife's car were Daytonas.
I didn't know that either. I knew they were wing cars, just didn't know what they were.
Yeah, exactly. Danny Boyd says you reach the same top speed, just quicker. Okay. Michael Roberts, Are Howard's cams any good? Well, I'm going to tell you what I know. Howard's cam is a representative. Well, they actually worked with the AHRA for Racers Rep. But the reason why I went after Howard's cams to work with them for AHRA is because Howard's cams is one of the last remaining manufacturers of automotive parts that are made in America. That's 100%, right?
Well, I can tell you that the comp cams, the actual cams themselves, are made right here in America too.
Well, and they may be, but the only reason I went after Howard's is because they did a post on it talking about made in America products. Yeah. And that's me. That's what I'm all about. You're American Hot Rod Association, not, Overseas Hot Rod Association or Mexico Hot Rod Association.
Yeah. Right.
So
I thought that was here working,
Yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as if you don't have a job because it got outsourced, how much longer till your neighbor doesn't have a job because it got outsourced?
Right.
Y'all can't have the same job working at 7-Eleven pumping gas when you used to have a nice job. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if Dallas gets watch hours before the live actually starts. No, not that I know of. The live generally generates about $10 a month. Is about all it generates. So it usually, YouTube, you don't get paid till $100 or something. So it usually goes for about 3-4 months, and then you finally get one check from YouTube.
You know what I'm going to say to that? Name the movie. Righteous Bucks, man.
I don't know what that is.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Remember the guy donated his body to science when they're going in there and they're about to lift out the heart, and this is whoever's name is, and he donated his body to science and he got $10, and Spicoli goes, Righteous Bucks, dude.
I'll make a sick announcement here, I guess.
Okay.
I have never seen that movie. I have never seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
What? Wait, is that real? Like, I had to make sure I process that.
I have never seen that movie, man.
Dude, there are whole parts of that movie, like especially when Moving in Stereo by the Cars comes out, and if anyone knows what part I'm talking about, that's when Phoebe comes out of the pool. Oh yeah.
Huh.
Dude, you got to watch the movie, man.
I have never seen it. It's just something that it's not like I went out of my way to not see it. I just have dumb luck. I've seen a ton of movies, man. I've seen a ton of movies because while I was in the Navy, on the ships, there is no TV. You can't just turn it on and you got cable.
Right.
We got cool things that track satellites, not listen to them.
Yeah.
They'd rather get a bunch of work out of you. So you'd work 18-hour days. You'd come spend an hour watching the tube, and then you go to bed.
Yeah.
And what we did was we had movies, right? And most of our movies were like the brand new stuff. So I've seen just about anything that has come out since 1992.
Okay. Fair enough.
To pretty much, 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago. So that was me in a nutshell. But I grew up without cable on a farm in Illinois. Essentially, just I'd never seen that movie.
Wow, dude, go and rent it. Get the director's cut and go watch that movie. And when the Cars Moving in Stereo comes on, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Huh. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, and just like a 2-lane blacktop. When I saw that, I was 23, I think.
Yeah.
22 or 23. Yeah. No, I wasn't that late. I was 19 or 20. And I saw it in San Diego. VH1 used to do this series called Movies That Rocked.
Yes, I do remember that, yeah.
It had 2-lane blacktop on it, and the following week was Vanishing Point. And I'm like, man, I was hooked. I kept watching every week from then on, but they never had any cool car movies after that.
Yeah.
Let's see.
They're referencing a part of the movie. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was pulling this one up from Mopar Man 1978. He was talking about the movie where the guy had, or Michael J. Fox had the Cutlass or whatever.
Valiant
the Valiant, the supercharged Valiant. Yeah.
I don't know.
In that movie, he had to race a guy named Gilbert from Nerds, and Michael J. Fox pushed a button to kick on the power. Clip in the movie shows the car's intake missing and a Slant 6 sitting in the car. Okay.
Huh.
See.
I'm gonna have to Google that. That sounds like an awesome one. Yeah, there's as you're looking that up, they keep referencing this part where Spicoli steals his best friend's brother's car, and he's going through traffic, and he's in this Trans Am, right? And he goes, "People on nude should not drive," or people on lewds. I'm sorry, people on lewds should not drive. And then the boy goes, "Hey man, you crashed my brother's car, man. He's gonna shit." And he goes, "Well, what are you talking about?" "Well, he's gonna kill us." He goes, "Well, make up your mind, dude. Is he gonna shit or is he gonna kill us?" And he goes, "First he's gonna shit, then he's gonna kill us." "Relax, man. My dad is a TV repairman. He's got an ultimate set of tools. I can fix it." "You can't fix this car, Spicoli." He gets up, stands up, looks out the car, and goes, "I can fix it." It's classic. It's classic. Yeah, it was a Z28. That's what it was. Yeah, it was a Z28.
Huh.
It was gray. Dude, I'm telling you, it's a classic movie, man. It's awesome.
Oh, Tom Brown's bringing up another movie here. Catch Me If You Can, movie from 1989 with the 57 Chevy. Great movie. I haven't seen that, but I've seen the other Catch Me If You Can with Tom Hanks. With, what's his name? Oh, that guy, DiCaprio. Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio. So, Ron English brings up, I have no care for the Super Bowl. I am not a sports ball kind of guy.
No.
At all. Zero. I give 2 nothings for sports ball. Now, I do enjoy baseball. I like listening to baseball on the radio.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely hate sports ball. I hate
I like
football,
hockey.
basketball. Do you?
I love hockey. Yeah,
It
I've always been
it
into
has
the
no
Kings.
appeal for me at all, and that's probably why I'm not 1984 like the rest of the world. But I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't. Travis
John
Mopar
Wilbur.
Garage, he says he was 47 when he saw 2-lane blacktop. Well, dude, I'm glad you saw it.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Oh, John Wilburn says something. He says, "I have an idea for a new short, and it's Pulido's fault." Yep, sure, good. I'll loan it.
Let's see. Well, the movie that I have seen that's like a big car movie that nobody talks about anymore is a movie called Dazed and Confused. Came out like in 93, 94.
I love that movie, dude.
Yeah, that was a fantastic flick, man.
That's right, right?
Yeah, and that was that would be yours and my generation high school years when that movie came out. That was one awesome movie, but it was about the 70s, and it was about pretty bitchin' muscle cars, right? Ben Affleck's the character he plays in there is such a douchebag, but the way he drives that Duster, dude, he literally just starts it up, puts it to the wood, and dumps the clutch, and just tries to steer wherever he goes, right?
And he drove the car exactly like people would back then.
That's how I would have drove it when I was like 16, and the cars were like $400.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Ron English is saying that's what makes me me, is that I don't like sports ball. Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I was telling someone the other day, I've never watched more than 10 minutes in my whole life of basketball. I've probably watched 3 games in my whole life, like beginning to end of of baseball. Maybe 10 of football. I just have no desire. I've watched some soccer now, but I've watched a lot of hockey. Just I like the LA Kings. I've always have, and then San Diego Gulls. They were fun.
Well, I've never been into hockey really. I mean, okay. So I'll tell you my sports stadium kind of stories here. Okay, there's not many. All right. Let's see. I used to like baseball as a kid, and in 1994, they went on strike, and somebody making a $1.8 million a year or $10 million a year going on strike. I was livid, because here I was working for $9 an hour, right?
Yep.
And I didn't even think about going on strike, and I couldn't listen to baseball on the radio because they weren't even playing a season that year. They ended up patching together some garbage thing that they called a season, but it was trash.
I remember that.
Yeah. That made me so mad at baseball. I did not listen to another baseball game for 15 years, probably.
Wow. Yeah.
Basketball. I was never really big into basketball. When I was a teenager, the Bulls were like the thing. And I was from Illinois, right? So you got to remember, Illinois doesn't have a good team for anything. Chicago Cubs suck. White Sox suck. Chicago Bears suck. The other teams that you can choose are St. Louis, but St. Louis is literally a Missouri team, right? So why would you choose to root for a Missouri team if you live in Illinois? No, it just doesn't happen. But when the Bulls started to get really good, and when they were assembling a team and they had Jordan at as their backbone and everybody else was working with them, right? It was probably the most fantastic thing to watch on TV, sports related, right? Because it was just like magic, like, boom, here's some magic for you and some more magic for you. And here's a layup piece of magic for you, you know? And they were constantly doing amazing stuff. And it was fun just to watch it. And I think I was with the rest of the world. I was just enthralled about how good basketball was because, and it, you know, I talked about this, 2015 with one of the sailors on the ship. He was walking around, LeBron James is the greatest ever. I said, no, dude, you are freaking on drugs. I said, go back to the 1990s and look at basketball. Every single team had one badass player, right? And they had a good supporting cast on a majority of the teams, right? If you look at the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons weren't mega, super duper crazy special during the 90s. It was really like, let's see, Los Angeles, right? The Lakers were fantastic for the early part of the 90s. Then it became the Bulls, right? Then it became like Seattle Supersonics were good. But every team had one marquee player. And Michael Jordan was just one of the marquee players amongst all the other teams that have a marquee player. You had David Robinson and freaking who was the guy that played out in Phoenix? I can't even think of it. Charles Barkley, right? Yeah. He had all these freaking fantastic players, and every team was pretty much loaded to the gills, and the Bulls were still trampling all over them. Right, that's what I really liked about it, was because it was so lopsided, but everybody had a fair dog in the hunt, right? And it was interesting to watch. And then let's see, the second or the third, I think it was the second three-peat that they did. Seattle came out of nowhere. The Bulls had beat them like 3 times that season to win and knock them off the pedestal, and I'm like, I think this is rigged just for ratings. That's what it started dawning on me. Like, I think this is rigged. Man, I'm telling you, the 80s, it's a bad tree said it right here. 80s and 90s NBA was a fist fight compared to today's. Yeah, that was a freaking awesome time to be like basketballing, and I was not a basketball fan.
You know what's funny is right now I got my very first experience of when I'm talking cars to my wife, and she says, I don't have a clue what you're saying. Right now, I don't have a clue what you're saying. I don't watch any basketball. I've never have.
Weird. Well, no big deal, dude. You're not you're not missing out on anything because it's already happened. But if you have the opportunity to go back and watch they did a special on ESPN probably 2-3 years ago about the Bulls on ESPN, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what that thing is called, but it was a really good like docu series on that, and that was a great time to watch basketball. And I was not a big basketball nerd, and when I realized that this was all about ratings, it just didn't make any sense, right? And I'm like, that's what it's all about, is eyes on the prize. And I'm not going to do it anymore, and I haven't watched it since. Football I've never been into, really, ever. As a kid, I did the same thing as everybody else. Hey, football, I love it. And then I never watched it. I don't know any of the guys' names. I don't know what the plays are. I don't know anything, right?
Here's my extent of football. Was when I was in 5th grade, the Bears were in the Super Bowl, right? And they made the Super Bowl shuffle. Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
So it was a rap, you know.
Yeah.
And I just remember some guy named Refrigerator Perry or whatever his name.
Yeah. That was the Bears. I want to say he was the center. He was the center.
Yeah. That's about the extent I know. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big football fan, basketball fan, none of that stuff, and that's fine. And what you find is, I've always said this, like the whole time I was in the Navy, the sailors would be like, oh, I'm not into that. And I'm like, hey, I get it, man. I'm going to tell you right now, there's only 3 kinds of guys in this world. Sports guys, car guys, and guys that like other guys. You just fall into one of them categories.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. That's it, man. If you're not doing cars and sports, though, you need to start questioning what you're doing.
Right?
Yeah.
Pick up something. Yeah.
Coloring books, something.
My dart actually started to give me a little bit of issues. My green dart.
Really?
Yeah, I was dry. It was running beautiful, and then all of a sudden it started to slowly run a little worse, until the point where it was only running on 5 cylinders. And I just was like, you know what? I parked it for about a week. I just didn't have time to mess with it. I go out there to mess with it. One of the wires, literally, I didn't touch it, didn't do anything. It broke inside where it clips onto the spark plug. It literally got some water in there, and either steam happened and it blew it off. But it literally blew off. And
you're talking about like the carbon or the carbon.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what that. It's some kind of
the filament
carbon
that goes
coated.
through.
Yeah, it's some kind of carbon coated filament deal. That broke.
That it blew off. So like literally, the metal was on the spark plug still, and then the wire had blown off. So how that happened, I have no earthly idea. And so,
that is interesting.
Yeah, it's a weird one. So I put new wires in it, adjusted the valves, boom, there it is. So that's the first for me. Never had that.
What kind of plug wires were they?
They're just AutoZone, not AutoZone, but O'Reilly's stuff.
Yeah, I don't do the Chinesium stuff. I don't. I go out of my way to not buy it.
I couldn't find anything for it.
Here's the sad part. Like I was sticking with the stuff that you would know is like, hey, I know that's good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like made in America, AC Delco. No, I got a box made in China.
Yeah,
I got some freaking calipers, AC Delco calipers for the Suburban. I just bought them. Came in a box with Chinese writing on them.
Yeah. And they have the colors, but it's Chinese writing. I tried to find. Remember Walker wires? Remember them? They were like that was the ones to get. And I can't find anything.
Autolights are poo now. They got sold out probably 4 years ago. It's all Chinesium stuff. Tony Engel cut the electrode on one of them, and it broke the ceramic on the plug when he did it. And he was talking about it, and I said, yeah, I noticed they're Chinesium, and I noticed that they break easy because I had some in my Suburban, and I was putting them in and broke it off. And I'm like, I've never broke a plug like that. I actually just did the other day trying to take a set out that were in some gorilla put them in. But
right.
And I had to get a half-inch drive breaker bar to get this fucking plug out. And that's when you know you're doing it wrong. You don't know what you're doing. Okay.
Where do you get wires from then?
Well,
Where do you get...
I've actually been leaning towards you buy like aftermarket, like Taylor wires.
Yeah, that's. I was looking for some Taylors for the Slant 6. That's actually what I was looking for, but I just couldn't find them. Like that. I would get them.
If you're Taylor Electronics ignitions or whatever, and you're listening to this live on YouTube, if you were to go into business just making automotive daily spark plug wires instead of make your own race pieces, I think you would clean house if you could keep the cost comparative.
Yeah,
I think you would, because they all ran themselves out of business by providing garbage.
Yeah, so I'm on their website right now, Taylor, and I put it in here. Let me just do it again. Make sure I wasn't like smoking crack or something.
Yeah, like engines that I buy or like I build and sell them, I'll use AC Delco Chinesium parts because it's only got to run for 20 minutes on my start stand. When you get it home, if it's got a problem, that's your problem.
Yeah,
right?
They don't even. I went to 1969. I tried a Dodge. I tried a Plymouth, and then I tried to go here to say all models, right? And then you go to engine, and they only have either small block or big block. No Slant 6. Can you believe that?
They're race only stuff. Yeah, they don't do passenger car daily stuff.
Yeah, man, I tried everything. I don't know, whatever. I
Well,
got
aren't
those ones.
those things? The plug is external, but it still uses the drill tubes like a Hemi, right?
Yes, on the early, I think it was 75 or 76. They changed over to basically where there's a slot, which is like the later version.
Can you get a regular plug wire on that thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can get a regular plug wire on there, but
Even with the drill tube ones, right?
Yes. Yeah.
not a Hemi
it has to be
style.
straight. Just has to be straight. But the thing is that your wires on those things are only about. Some of them are only like 6 inches because your distributor's right there.
Well, okay. And here's where All right. So I cheat on some of this stuff because I found that, okay, a Buick, you cannot use a 90-degree boot like a Chevrolet small block. You can on a Ford small block somewhat, as long as they have enough length that you can bend them in towards the center. But a Buick is like a 45-degree angle, right? Or they're straight. Okay, that 45 or straight is the only ones you can live with. I found out that a big block Chevrolet is that way, right? That they come in 45. So I usually just buy big block Chevrolet, and it's got the tallest deck out of all any V8s for GM V8s, and I'll just cut the wires to length.
To make them up, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't make them up. I don't buy the makeup ones. I just buy some cheapy big block ones.
Oh.
And I cut the ends off, and I just open up the because they're just crimped.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You just uncrimp them, and then you recrimp them with a wire crimper.
Yeah.
And,
I got one of those handheld ones, when I used to do my MSD wires.
Yep. That's exactly what I use that tool for now. Is I take regular wire sets that are reputable American-made stuff, and they make them for a big block Chevrolet, and I cut them all up and make them fit a Buick. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea because I'll try that with the Taylors because it was a 360 is going to be a straight plug, and that's what I need is just a straight plug, and I can just make them shorter. So yeah, it'd be fine.
Huh.
That'd
And
work.
you have two left over. So then the third time you go to do it, guess what? They're free.
Free set of wires.
Yeah.
Giggity giggity goo.
Yeah, but you literally paid for 2 extra wires every time. Yeah. So Uncle Squirrel says he's so far removed from sports, he literally thought Dennis Rodman played hockey, and he may. Let's see. Kurt Tank says, Professor, what's your favorite spark plugs for early engines? I've been using NGK in my Ford FE390 engine.
Oh man, people are gonna just butcher me for this. Man, I use Autolights because they're cheap and I don't give a crap.
They are Chinese. I don't mess with them anymore at all.
Yeah,
Once I saw that on the package, I'm telling you, when that plug broke off, and it broke like a Tums, right? Like I had a plug wire or like a spark plug made out of Tums. It just broke off, and I'm like, what in the world? I want to say I was gapping the plugs, and I set it down on the table next to the other one, and it hit it and broke.
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like, well, that's cheap. Those were never like that. And then I got to looking at the package, and it was a new package, and the logo had changed. It was the same color, but on the back of the package said "Made in China." And I went and grabbed a set off the shelf that I used for my race car, Autolights. I used Autolights AR3933, I think, is what I used. And I pulled that set of plugs out, and it said "Made in America," and that was from 2 years before. And I'm like, okay, I see what's happened here. Autolite, no longer purchase those. So plugs, I stick, and I know I do. I stick to NGKs, and that's because they're made in Japan. And the Japanese will never sacrifice quality over quantity ever.
I use NGKs in my race car stuff. In my everyday driver, I bought a whole pack of Autolite 65s. Probably, well, I shouldn't say a pack. I bought a case of those things. Man, was it? So I actually haven't bought plugs for my Slant 6 in a long time because I've still been using the ones in there. I'm going to go look at the box. I bet you they're probably still made in America because I bought those back in 2014.
You probably did. You would see that these, go look at them because I bet you it's different. If you bought them in 2014, then they're probably made in America stuff because I think it was 2018 or 19, those plugs, when I realized that they were made in China.
Okay, well, I've been using Autolights. I've tried to use the projected electrode in the Slant 6. I just never had any luck with it. For my setup and the way I tune my cars, the 64, 65 is just right for my engines. They just seem to run just fine. But yeah, I haven't bought a set of plugs in that for a long time. But I used to use the AR34 3933s, I believe. It's like a back cut plug. And then I ran some Champions for a while. It was like a CX55X, I think is what it was, or 35X.
Have you noticed that all the race application stuff they're all the same plug numbers that everybody uses because they're all about 12-to-1 compression. They all have like the non-tapered seat straight plug with a crush sleeve on it. Everybody runs like the same stuff.
Yeah. And then I kept getting Champions that kept breaking. That was actually the first one that was happening to me. That was back
really?
Yeah, that was back in the 2000s, 2005. They kept breaking, like literally, like you'd screw them in. This is my indie heads, and that's when I found the Autolights, that AR, that back cut plug, and they were only like $1.50 each at the time. So I was like, I'm just gonna get these. And then, but I haven't put plugs in that car. I also bought a case of those. I bought them on Summit when you could buy a whole massive case of those things. They were cheap, and so when I go to buy plugs, I'm gonna look for that, see if it says made in China. I'll have to look for that.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I bet you're gonna find it the next time you look at it. But well, here, let's catch back up because
Sure.
there's a lot of stuff I'd like to talk about. But
Sure.
let's see. Danny Boyd says 69 Rally Sport 350 4-speed light metallic blue with rally wheels wrapped around a tree. Okay, I don't want to hear about this anymore. 38 POS Racing Down. I think the movie you're thinking of is called Highwayman. I believe that it is it. I can't remember who's the guy that's in it. He's a younger guy. He kind of looks like John Boy from, oh man, what was that TV show way back in the 80s? John Boy, The Mountain. Man, I can't remember what movie that or what TV show that was. The Waltons. That's what it was. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat says Tales from a Crypt episode King of the Road is a street race story.
Yes,
Huh.
I remember that one. Dude, that's a good one.
I can't remember that, but I'm sure it's still out there. I'm sure I can go look at it. Okay. Let's see. I'm not entirely sure what this is. Tom Brown saying, came across a Syntex fuel consumption monitoring kit today. May have to save up for one. Can bolt it on any petrol engine and get on demand fuel flow numbers.
Oh, that's good. So that we can calculate fuel flow. That's good.
But brake specific fuel consumption.
Yep. And that can tell you exactly how much power you're actually making.
Oh, based on how much energy you put in is how much you get out, right?
Well, actually, how much you're getting out is how, and then you can basically figure out how much you're losing.
Oh, okay. So it'd be the efficiency of the engine overall.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did
6% recycled says, what about Scott wires?
Oh,
I've never heard of them.
nope. I'm going to check them out.
But there's a lot of made in America stuff that didn't get all the promo behind it. You know, like Baldwin oil filters. I never ever heard of Baldwin oil filters until I started researching American-made oil filters, and they came up as like one of the very first. Because did you know that all the stuff that you go buy at, O'Reilly's is all Chinesium junk now, right?
Yeah.
And here's what's funny that no one and it's not that like I'm on this big tirade against China. Here's the thing: when I was a kid, probably about 1980, China made all these cheap knockoff oil filters. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And they flooded the market, and people were paying they were buying them at like Kmart. They were paying like $1 for them when everything else was like $2 or $3.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember this. Yeah.
And it ruined like hundreds of thousands of engines. Okay. And they took the filters off and they took them apart, and there wasn't even a filter element inside of it.
Yeah. Some of them were just cardboard. They were literally just cardboard. Yeah.
And that got me to thinking, they're not in it for you to win. They're in it for one place to win. Even if you pay them, they don't care. Right? And that's one of the reasons why I do that. The other thing is coming from military background, because if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm retired Navy. So and I've said it like 1,000 times. So FYI, I'm retired Navy. Okay, the Chinese were taking the stuff that we use for a lot of stuff that we use we take for granted. Okay, and that's what I mean by that was in the 90s and early 2000s, the Chinese made stuff was always junk, and everybody knew that and laughed at it and kind of joked about it. Okay.
Yes.
And no one ever used it in like a serious application, racing application or anything. It was more or less the get to work for cheap application. Okay. What happened is when we started making crankshafts over there and connecting rods and all that stuff, they figured out heat treatment because they had never learned that before. It was metallurgy and heat treatment that they had never done before. And this is where stealing somebody's research has worked out for them in the long run, because once they started heat treating stuff, it started lasting. And it would last longer than the 10 minutes, but still minute amounts compared to a good quality made piece. And so they split the difference and compromised. They make it out of crap metal, but they heat treat it so it lasts a little bit longer, and then they undercut everybody else, and they flood the market full of this garbage, and everybody goes out and buys it because it's cheap and it makes good power for what it is. But have you been to the drag strip lately where you're watching everybody blow up more consistently than you have before? I have. I see it on a routine basis. And you want to know why? I'll tell you why. Because you can easily make 600 horsepower at home these days. And when I was a youngster and making 600 horsepower, you had aluminum rods. Or you had aluminum rods made by Crower or Bill Miller Engineering, right? Yep. GRP. Or you had billet rods that were made by Oliver or again Crower, right? High-end, made-in-America stuff, and they cost a lot of money back then, okay? Now you can make 600 horsepower by ordering crap right off of Summit, and it gets delivered to your house, and you're making twice as much or 3 times as much horsepower as you were in, 99. And then you put the cheapest, chintziest, junkiest rods that they make and crankshaft in there from Eagle or Scat, because that's literally pooped out of a Chinese person on a line, right? Like, and then what they do is they bring it to the U.S. and they manufacture it, or they finish machine it in the U.S. That's it. The metallurgy is still not there, or they're cheaping out on it because they don't want to spend the money on the carbon and make a good quality part. They'd rather charge you 3/4 of the price of a Crower part and sell you something that's junk, right? So that's why I have a big heartburn with all that stuff. If you're paying 3/4 the price of a Crower part, pay the other quarter.
Yeah, you just get it. Yeah,
and you'll never blow your junk up. Yeah. But that's big horsepower takes impressive parts to make it live. Right.
Yeah, and that's on this on my engine. I've got Crower rods in there that are like 20. I mean, they're way overkill. They're like 2,500 horsepower rods, and they got the AMS, wavelength style rod bolts on it, which are basically called 3.5s. Those are the ones you torque to like 90 foot-pounds or like 280,000 psi tensile strength. Never gonna hurt those things. Crower cranking it, so it can handle it.
Yeah. Well, I need to catch up because we're way behind. But see, okay, Mohawk 62 saying they used to love Packard brand wires. They had a copper core, really messed with the radio without a resistor. And the plug itself was not a resistor. So you had a non-resistor ignition. It would really mess with the radio on that. Let's see. All right. So Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage says he uses... I'm sorry. I picked the wrong one. Okay. Autolights for NA motors, NGK for nitrous setups. That is what I do. I used to run Autolights and everything, and until I noticed that the ceramic was cheapy on it.
I'm gonna look at my box. I really am. I'm as soon as I get done here, I'm gonna go out there and look at that box.
Yeah. So running nitrous is where you really get to appreciate plugs and find out what works, because you pull the sucker so much, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I never, ever in my life bothered even putting antices on a plug. Now I do, just because you got aluminum heads and I don't pull them all the time. But nitrous stuff, it would be in there one run, and you'd pull that plug and look where it was burning, on the electrode. Maybe that's what we should do on an episode. It's like, we need to talk about how to actually read a plug, right?
Yes. I was just thinking that too, because I'm going to be running some juice through this engine. So we're going to have to read some
and nitrous is a good way to learn how to do that. Then you start off small amounts, and then you start increasing it once you start getting the hang of reading the plugs, right? Because you can tell what's really going on. And Andy's right. In Autolights, what I found on Autolights is, for some reason, the heat in the ceramic allows the good parts of the burn to stay on the ceramic, and NGKs are not that way. They're a dirty plug. They collect carbon color on the ceramic. I don't know why. I have no idea.
Porous. I think it's just because it's a little bit more porous, because I noticed that too. Is that my
They'll always
NGKs?
brown. If you have
Yes.
if you have an NGK that's like a quality piece, it'll brown, but it gets like the perfectly roasted marshmallow color to it, right? Now you go look at the equivalent NGK like that, it'll be a darker brown always, right? And it'll be like he's saying that maybe it might be porosity of it. It'll be like dotted in spots where that brown is at.
Yeah.
And it never looks as clean as an Autolite. I don't know why. But yeah, maybe porosity. I don't know. But now with the new Autolites, I don't even give them a chance. Let's see. Max Wedge Dick Dashley. I put champions in Dad's truck. Had to take them right back out. Barely ran. Electrodes were off center. Oh, I've never seen that. But
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I think I've never used champions in my life though.
I'm a Mopar guy, so everything comes with champions with Mopar.
Is that factory plug?
Yeah, it's a fact. Well, basically, I think they made them for Mopar. But yeah, whenever you go into like the Mopar book, it always tells you run this champion plug.
Huh. Here's something interesting. Baldwin Filters is the filter that Herb McCandless recommends. And he's here to tell the tale. Danny Boyd made them in Chinesium. Wicks are made in Chinesium. Yeah. I just found that out the other day.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So that means that K&N then is also Chinesium then, right?
I think so.
Wow.
Well, you remember about 2 years ago the box changed on them?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
I wonder why.
Okay.
I think they all got sold out. But and there's another thing that happened too that nobody probably noticed because it went unnoticed, and it's only for some applications. You remember them super awesome Bosch oil filters you used to be able to get like at Walmart?
Yeah, yeah.
They're not out there anymore.
Really?
Yeah, you can't buy them. They just disappeared. They just like disappeared into the night, and there's like only a few applications left where you can get them.
Wow.
All right.
Didn't know any of that. I've got a stack of Wix filters out there from Napa because that's the only filter I was, I cut them open, and every single time I, change the filter, I always cut it open to look to see what's inside there, and they still look good inside. It doesn't look like it's changed inside, but I'll look at the box.
Huh. Let's see. Big Belly Racing saying, I believe fire core wires are USA made. And I want some of these companies to start proving that they make them in USA because there's some of them like, have you noticed the big thing now? Assembled in the USA.
Yeah, right.
Right? Well, that doesn't
Assembled
mean
in the
anything.
box. That means put in the box. Fire core. I'm actually going there right now, checking. Spark plug wires.
Like I'd love to find, and I'll buy the crap and support the hell out of them, even if their product is pretty much subpar, as long as they're employing my neighbor, right? I know that sounds kind of dumb, but
But I got to tell you, man, really, I think, and I'm not trying to promote this, but you really should look at a Wix filter. I cut those open every single time. I put them on my diesel truck. Everything gets a Wix filter, even my lawnmower. And I cut them open, and man, they're the best built ones on the market.
I don't doubt it. I just noticed when I was in the parts store the other day that they were made in China, and I'm like, what? I thought Wix was the last holdout, and apparently not.
Which filters are you using now then? Which ones are...
I have a Wix. That's what I just bought, but it will probably be the last one. And if I can find, I know. All right, so here's something I do know: Purolator, which you can buy at Tractor Supply, is not made overseas, right? They're like $9 or $10 a filter. But I use those. I used to buy them going on a style because here's what's funny is like the filters for the Buicks, they're kind of few and far between. They haven't made the V8 since since 76 for the 455 and big block stuff, and for the 350 it ended in 81, and then the V6, the original 3.8 liter, ended in 1987. So you can't just go out and buy a filter to fit those things. Usually you have to order them.
Yeah.
At Wix is generally in stock at the parts store, and the other one is Pure Later. When I go to Tractor Supply, they have the exact one for the Buick, and I pick it up. The GM ones, the PF24, I think is what they were. They're Chinesium.
Wow.
The AC Delco, right? So, see, Unnamed is saying here that Dallas and his China hate on LOL. I'm sorry, I am bashing on him a bit, but man, I'm telling you right now, there's some things. I mean, like I can't go out on a huge limb to tell you what's going on, but I'll give you the insight on this. Okay, well, you remember I was telling you about metallurgy. Okay, metallurgy is a big thing. My job in the Navy was finding and hunting submarines, and it took, I don't know. So when I went in the Navy, the big thing was, you remember the Cold War submarine stuff. Okay, it took the Russians like 50 years to get to where they were at when I joined the Navy. It took the Chinese 3.
Wow.
Is your light coming on yet? Because see, that metallurgy isn't just applied to a crankshaft.
It's for everything. They're using the technology to build our stuff.
Bingo.
So that they can build their warships.
Their weapons. The weapons, the machines of weaponry, right? And I'm sorry, guys. I'm just not going to pay for myself to get slaughtered. And especially when I was active duty, that's really how I looked at it. Because I'm not going to give somebody my money to shoot me. It's just not going to happen. That's the dumbest thing you can do. That's why, I'll buy NGK plugs. I know they're Japanese. Come on, right? But there is no good American plug manufacturer that I know of. Excel and what was the other plug that was a hot rod plug? E3. Okay, I think those are. Excel was in Taiwan in the 90s, so I'm assuming that they probably haven't changed. And I don't have a problem with Taiwan. I just won't
I'm not trying to.
Yeah, I won't support
kill us.
communism. So. The other one is E3s, I believe, are probably made in Mexico or Vietnam. I'm not sure. I can't see a plug manufacturer starting today and it not starting out overseas. So Danny Boyd says his Corolla eats the plugs at about 250,000 miles. I imagine there's probably. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you're right. 25,000 miles. I imagine there's not a lot of money in plugs these days because everything goes so damn long.
Yeah.
Right? When you had to change them at 3,000 miles, that was probably a big turnover item.
Yeah, now they're just like, they're staying there for the life of the vehicle now.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I started thinking about this. My wife has a Ford Expedition, and it's got those weird 100,000 mile plugs in it with the coil packs and all that crap and no plug wires. And so I had changed them at the 100,000 mile mark, and I was driving it just recently, and it started throwing codes and bucking and all kinds of stuff. So I started reading online, and it's got one of these EcoBoost 3.5s in it. In the write-up, to summarize what was going on is 35,000's gap was too big because you're in a turbocharged application and you're increasing cylinder pressure to the point where it won't actually fire the plug, right? And they were on the ragged edge to begin with at 35,000s. And generally what people think is the bigger the gap that you have, the more power that it makes because it has the opportunity to burn more fuel. That's true, generally, okay? Until you start looking at cylinder pressure. You got to have enough coil to fire that, right? And that's where it starts to become a problem. Well, at 35,000s, it was blowing out the plug. So I pulled all the plugs and re-gapped them all, and they got 40,000 miles on them since I put them in, right? 40,000. And they looked like a used plug, but it was like still the electrode was there, and still the strap and the ground strap and all that was still there. And I just closed up the gap to 28,000, put it back in. Now I don't have a problem. So, but I just thought it was kind of funny that nobody figured that out from the get-go.
Yeah. I've always tried to tighten up the gap as much as I can. Instead of going the biggest one. Because all it's doing is basically just storing the energy in the coil to jump the gap. But
right. It hurts. It actually hurts your ignition system having a big gap.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It'll overheat the coils. Let's see here. Moperman 1978 says I cut apart one of my used Wix oil filters. We had it on a 4.8 Chevy motor. Still built well. Okay, we'll go get one today and buy it and cut it open.
I'm gonna cut my next one open again and just look at it a little bit more in depth. I'm gonna do that.
Said
I might
John
even do a
Williams.
video on it.
Purelator was a $2 filter in the early 90s. I don't know. They're like $9 now. They were $4 and something when I was buying them the other day. And I was, 2 years ago when I started doing Buicks, and I found out they carried them.
I still remember their logo. Pure later now, pure oil later.
Exactly. Perfect. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat Dallas parts today went from if it will break to when it will break. Yeah, that
is
true.
correct. Yeah.
100%. Let's see. Doug Narden says, when I worked at the asphalt company, we bought Purelator filters by the case. I love buying them. To tell you the truth, I went to the Walmart the other day and had my oil changed on the way home from an event, and because my truck decided it was going to gas down the oil because it was 37 degrees outside and it never got hot. So it ran closed loop or open loop the whole time.
Yeah.
It had gassed down the oil, and I noticed it when I started up and started blowing out smoke. And it'll normally do that when you get the oil too thinned out. Mm-hmm. I stopped at the Walmart to change the oil, to have an oil change, and the girl at the oil change facility says, "Man, I've never seen an oil filter like that. They got to be really expensive." And I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, sure."
Speaking of that, I do have something to talk about. I went to should I say it? Yeah, why not? I went to Costco to get my tires rotated on my truck. And I go and I drop it off. I come back, and the lady looks at me and she goes, "You do your own mechanic on your car?" And I was like, "Yeah, I sure do." And she goes, "You don't have to grease the threads on the lugs. They're actually designed to be put on dry." And I'm like, and she goes, "So if you put them on there, lubed, they're gonna come loose." I'm like, "Well, you guys torqued them down to the factory spec." And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, how do you think you get to the stretch? The clamping force is not from the lug tightened against the wheel. That just centers it. It's held in there by the pull of the stud. Yeah. The only way you can get the correct pull on the stud to get the correct tension on the stud is to grease it."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Well, because you put that on there, we can't guarantee that they'll come out and you have she came up with some number, some arbitrary, like, you have a 70% chance of them coming off, like she's read this before." And I was like, as long as you tighten to the correct torque, they will not come off because they got the correct tension on them, So that was my,
okay.
So, yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
Sure, no problem. So what I did is I came home and I retorqued them myself. So just to check them.
Yeah, and it would be fine. A-Cope says, "I look for parts made in the USA. It takes a hunt, but worth it." Yeah. I always find that the parts are higher quality. You will pay more money because look at what it costs. All right, and I'll explain it to you. The money made in an industry like this is all made from the people that work in the industry, right? Like your manufacturers on the line. Okay. An American worker probably makes... I can't see him working in a factory for anything less than $10 an hour these days. Okay, I don't know what 15. The real number is. Is it 15? You think?
It's got to be 15. Yeah.
Okay. The Chinese worker works in the factory because he doesn't want to get shot in the face. Right. Okay, he doesn't get paid. That's the difference.
Yeah.
It's free slave labor. That's why communism was bad. Nothing's changed with that. That guy still gets shot in the face. Now, where it works out is this. If you're a communist and you are a trash collector and you only pick up pink bags, and there's 7 places in all the country that you pick up the pink bags and you get paid, because the way communism works is everybody gets paid the same, right? Everybody. It's shared in a community. And what it is, your government collects $40 billion trillion a week, right? And they divvy it up based on how many people are there. Yeah. And everybody gets the same amount. That's how that works. And here's the sad part. If you're the pink trash collector guy and you got to pick up 7 bags a week and you literally do no work and you have a free funded vehicle and you don't have to pull your hair out to keep it on the road, you're making out because you're getting paid $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year to do that. Right? What about the other end of the spectrum? The guy that cleans, I don't know, shit pipes. and he's got 400 billion miles of shit pipe to clean, and there's 12 guys on his crew. And he's cleaning miles and miles and miles every day. He gets paid $40, $50, $60,000 a day or a year to get to clean miles and miles and miles of shit pipe every day.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a fair system. Mm-hmm. So it has no really what it is it doesn't incentivize you to strive to be any better. Right? Yeah. And you never get to choose the job that you freely choose. That's the problem. You go to work, or we shoot grandma in the face. And right now, you're a shit pipe cleaner. And so
we shoot grandma in the face. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so Fabrice Mod Repeat says Dallas NGK has a rougher surface porcelain than the AL plug.
Oh.
Oh, I'm probably Autolite. Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Right. So Danny Boyd says the big gap weakens the spark, it ups the resistance. All correct. And then when you throw in higher cylinder pressure in there, it makes it even harder to jump that arc, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see. Had a Sportster that burned oil. Max Wedge Dastardly says. Kept putting old rusty Autolights back in. I left a trail of champions and NGKs on the road.
He's probably the old Autolights. That's why. You know?
Yeah. Oh, well, so, excuse me. Mohawk62 says, I remember when Walmart was a made in the USA store, and that's when Sam Walton was alive, right? When Sam Walton died, that ended quickly. Now, they still do support some Made in America stuff, but what it is those companies realized, man, we make a lot more money making it elsewhere. So, but here's the sad part, company, when nobody can afford your product anymore because nobody has any money. That starts to become a problem.
Yeah.
You don't sell them anymore. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now, Auto Salvage Outlaw says nothing's made like it used to be.
It's true.
Yeah. It is the cheap. Like, if you really want to know the difference, go look at. I'll tell you what. Go to a garage sale and buy like a Milton Bradley or Parker Brothers game from the 60s or 70s.
Yes.
And then find the same game at Walmart today.
It's crap.
Oh my God, you will be devastated, right?
Yeah.
Like
Electronic Battleship. I have that from the 80s. The real one, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I saw another one, and it was just so flimsy and cheap. It just
well,
mine's like built like a brick house, you know.
The one I've seen it again is Life, the game of Life. You remember that game?
Oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So when I played it as a kid, it had like a Wheel of Fortune wheel on it, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was like literally a wheel that you spun, and it had like
Yeah.
and it was still cheapy chintzy at that time. Okay, in like probably
worse.
the 80s. Oh my God, dude! I didn't think it'd get worse, but it is 100% worse.
Wow.
And it probably costs twice as much. You want to know why the value of your house keeps going up? The value of your house keeps going up because not the value of your house, because the less buying power of the dollar. Your house has remained the same. Mm-hmm. It's the watermark. The house is, right? The dollar number is not. That's the smoke and mirrors. The home equity was never such thing, really. It's the devaluing of the dollar.
Yeah, to make everything seem so inflated. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Walmart. Okay, so Power Man 1978. Walmart Jiffy Lube used the cheapest made in China filters. The oil filter screws on with a strip of sheet metal with threads. I think they're actually all like that, aren't they?
Yeah, but some of them have a press, like the Wix one. It has a pressed-in insert that crimps in.
Like a
nut
nutsert?
So it's like, yeah, it's like an actual threaded insert that's crimped in there. So it looks like a bolt, like a nut.
Huh. Let's see. Well, okay. So NSB Custom Car says, I started on the line at Coates for $8.50 an hour. Now I think they're starting out at $19.25 an hour. Gosh, dang.
Yeah.
I remember in 1994, I had a job making interior parts for Chryslers, and it was a subcontracted company in Rantoul, Illinois, called Rantoul Products, and they worked directly for Dodge, right? And we were making. I think I graduated high school, went right to work there, and I was on a probationary period where I made $9.45 an hour. And when I finished the probationary period, I was making $10.25. Okay, $10.25 in 1994 was pretty damn good job for just graduating high school and no further education.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was only going to go up from there. So I worked there for about, I don't know, a year. I'll say a year. And one day, I was like, I came into work, and I was teaching this guy. He spoke no English, was a Hispanic guy, right? And we're like, okay, well, this dude probably just crossed over the border and went to work in the U.S. And okay, so I'm teaching him how to do my job, and I'm putting in like 6-7 rivets in every 20 seconds. You just run through this gambit of rivets, and the line was run pretty fast, and you either caught up or you were meant to keep pace, or they move you to another position where it didn't matter. Okay, so I taught this guy my job, and then like the next Monday he was gone, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess he didn't need the job, and maybe he moved on, went somewhere else, so I found something better. The following week, the whole line was gone. The whole line. They came in on a Saturday, and they had laid everybody off for. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the end of the season layoff. There's a layoff period that they did that they allowed you to take vacation on, and it was literally like a week that you weren't there. And you came in after the layoff period, and the whole line was gone. They just unbolted everything from the floor, and they cut all of the bolts off, gone, and you just had no line anymore. Like there was nothing there. It was all moved. And I walked in, and I told my supervisor, I said, did we move to another spot? And she says, no, they moved the whole line. And I said, okay, well, where is it at? Is it over in another building? And she said, no, it's in Mexico. And so is your job, right?
Oh,
and I'm
that's
like,
who you were training. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And once that NAFTA thing passed, that shit did not wait around 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. They didn't even tell anybody they were getting laid off. I went in there and I said, yeah, you got to go back to second shift, or you go hit the unemployment line. Like, okay.
Wow.
So, yeah, went down to the Navy recruiter, joined the Navy. Let's see. Well, Auto Salvage Outlaws, thanks for pushing the Dallas channel. This is not my channel. This is the AHRA's channel. I am just a
Caretaker.
person within the community of the AHRA, right?
Yeah.
It's your association. So, all right. Okay. So, Twisted Mopar Garage. Why Chevy had a gap of like 65 thousandths. The HEI was like that.
Yeah.
The HEI it was for emissions purposes, actually. The HEI had a horrendously huge gap, and the cylinder pressure on most of those engines, so the compression ratio was generally like 7.6 to 8 to 1 is the most you generally got. And the shorter well, I guess I couldn't say that. The shorter the rod, the quicker the piston comes to top dead center, right? And what you found is that those engines actually had a narrower gap because it would cause them to detonate when they had a huge gap like that. Or maybe, is that right? I think so. I think that's right.
Yeah. They had the big gap too, because of the way the coil worked on top of the, where the coil was sitting right on top of it. So there was a whole it'd store more energy because it doesn't have to go through a wire, it just goes through the pin straight down.
Well, and that's true. Yeah, there isn't a wire. Mm-hmm. It is directly connected with a brass terminal, or a brass button, I guess. All right, so if you haven't figured out, the only reason that, and Shane, you probably know this, the people went away from points you could only get so much dwell time on a set of points, because the slowness of the points themselves is what dictated that. Okay, the mechanical movement of the points, And you were only looking at like the most dwell you could possibly get on them without burning the points out was like 40 or 45. That's where the dual point came in, and it allowed you to overlap the points. Okay, and you could create like say 50 degrees of dwell. Okay,
so it drops the circuit. Yeah.
Electronic ignition started at 55 degrees of dwell, right? And it went up from there. Okay, and the dwell is how long it allows the coil to be saturated with voltage before it discharges. The longer you can saturate the coil, the better, more efficient spark you get. And
but it makes everything run hotter.
it does make everything run hotter. It will. And what's really cool about it is electronic ignition came out at the right time. 73 is when the oil embargo crap started. Okay. And the fuel, and it wasn't because of fuel economy. What it was is stuff that you wouldn't consider gasoline before became gasoline, right? Which was unleaded gasoline, which is now our high water mark for gasoline because you get ethanol in there. But it was absolute trash. 87 octane was trash. No one would use that crap prior 1972. Okay.
Yeah.
It was always, you had your regular gas, which was what it was called, regular, and then you had ethyl, right, which was 10% cut ethanol, regular gas. Okay, that was leaded, and the tetraethyl lead in there is what essentially lubricated the exhaust valve. It had a lot of heat and it slow burned, but it allowed for 11-to-1 compression. The higher the compression, the more efficient the engine is. And when we lowered it down to 8-to-1 is when Shane and I were hot rodding in the dark ages right there. Because I remember the hottest engines out there had like 8.5-to-1, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You put a cam, here's where the thing was, nobody put cams in there that was like, let's say anything over 225 at 50, right? Yeah. Because your compression be so low, it will almost, you taking a chance of it wouldn't run.
Yeah, it wouldn't run. It couldn't even get up sometimes the driveway. Yeah, like it sounded awesome, but it couldn't even get up the driveway.
It wouldn't do anything. Yeah. So the ticket used to be, if you really wanted something cheap and you could actually get more performance out of it, is you found like a early unleaded fuel camshaft, right? So you go back to like a 70 and before camshaft, and that was the cheapest and most cost-effective way to have a performance cam put in your car without buying a performance cam, because those generally, they didn't care about fuel or about emissions and fuel economy.
They were talking about power, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
That's what they were ultimately focused on.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's see.
Where are we at? Oh,
I haven't done one in a while. Okay.
I'm kind of going through. I haven't really seen much questions.
Yeah, me neither. Okay, so Colleen Tebow says, I've had a good luck finding NOS parts cheap on eBay, $25 for 318 TRW cam bearings. All right, so I've been using eBay for OEM stuff for quite a while, because what is happening right now is, and you saw a piece of it when Andy Wood did a video on his local mom and pop's car parts store going out of business. All right. And when these things go out of business, they generally have a big auction. And what happens is these auction hounds will come in there and buy the whole lot. And then what they'll do is they'll sell all those parts off over the course of 10 years and hopefully double or triple their money.
Yep.
Right? And that's where those parts come from. And I've been buying them like that for a while. The other one is lifters. You know how you guys are like worried about lifters for camshafts? Buy a set of NOS lifters off of eBay that are factory OEM replacement pieces, and here's what you'll never have a problem with: lifter failure.
Lifters. Yep.
Yeah, and
I got a whole box of the old Melling ones, the old Mopar Melling ones. Yeah.
Here's how I do it. Real simple, okay? And you can do it however you want. If you're a V8 aficionado, you're looking for 16 lifters, and what will most people do? They'll walk right past 15 or less. Right past them, okay? And they're looking for 16 because they need 16, and that's what they want is 16. Buy the 4, buy the 6, buy the 12, buy the
Piece
10.
them together. Yep.
piece yourself together 16 lifters that are, and what you're looking for is you're looking for a box to those lifters that don't have a laser printer number on them where you can see it's been printed by a computer. You want ones that are stamped. You want a stamp because a stamp means it's prior 1996, right? That's when you know you're getting high quality stuff.
Yeah. That's funny you say that because that's exactly what I do. Is I go to and I look through the ones that just stamped on, or that's why I run a lot of the oil pumps on my Slant 6s are the original ones, the aluminum ones, and I just rebuild them for that reason. That's awesome. I do the same thing. And on my rocker arms from my Slant 6, I have brand new rocker arms on there because I bought them. You know, 1 here, 2 there, 3 there. And I bought a brand new shaft. I did the exact same thing. Looked for the TRW. Yeah, I pieced them together. Someone would sell 4 of them. I just bought them.
I got lucky with. I was piecing together a set of lifters one day, and I was on eBay. And the part number that I always look for is the Sealed Power HT969. Okay. Well, I type in HT-969, which is a Sealed Power number for a Buick Olds Pontiac lifter. They're the same diameter as a Chevrolet lifter, but the oil band's in a different spot. Okay. Yep. So you can't use them in anything else. And some people will use a Chevrolet lifter in a Buick. The problem is the oil band's in the wrong spot. What ends up happening is it restricts the oil going to the top, okay, to the top end. The HT969, I type it in. Well, lo and behold, there's this thing come up, and I had never seen it before. It was a sale for HT969 bulk lifters, and it's the same part number. What it was is an engine rebuilder. Right? They used to deal with lots of engines. They turn out quality, like rebuilds day after day after day, like ATK or whatever. And all those are probably in Mexico now. I don't know. There used to be a lot of engine rebuilders around the United States and not so much anymore. But they had a box of these and their engine rebuilder business went out of business. So they sold the entire box, and it was, I want to say, I don't know, 9 or 12 engines worth, something like that.
Yeah.
Of lifters. And it was $500. And I'm like, God dang, that's a lot of lifters. But I was looking at 16 big block Buicks, right? So I'm going to make out here. I got enough for every single one of them. I paid $500. And if you think about it, you buy a set of lifters now, what are they? $200 for a set, right? Well, I was buying them for like $60 a set or $40 a set, whatever it was. And I bought the bulk. I bought that whole thing up, and it is set on there for a while, but I knuckled down and I bought the dang thing. So, let's see. Mopar, Mustangs, minivans. There was a shop I worked at a while ago. 3 oil change options: standard, extended, and premium. Didn't matter your choice. You got oil from the same drum as anyone else.
I think that was just going to be the filter that was changed.
It was extended run filter, right? Bosch used to sell a filter that was twice as deep as the original ones. That was extended runs. Okay. Let's see. Craig Chitto. Where is the squishy middle between efficiency and emissions? How much do you... I don't know.
Squishy middle. If
For
it's super
fuel?
efficient, you're going to get the... But see, sometimes emissions are just worried about how much hydrocarbons are coming out. They're not
At
really...
idle. That's the thing I don't like, is at idle.
It's at idle, yeah.
Well, guess what your fuel economy your car is getting at idle? Zero.
Zero.
That's not under load.
Yeah, and most of them are like barely off of idle, like 1,100 RPM. So you're not even going down the road at that. So
It's under no load.
no.
So, yeah, that's the thing I've never liked about it, is that emissions thing is a freaking joke. That's a shakedown by your government to collect some money.
Yep.
Right? It really is. California was the worst about it.
My diesel truck was a whiteboard, and they would rev the engine 3 times, and there was a bullseye, and the bullseye had to be certain far distance from the tailpipe, and they would count the black flakes within a certain amount, and they had to take a picture of it. That was the smog emission test for a diesel truck, $150. California.
I did it in 96. I had an 87 Oldsmobile Cutlass I brought from the Midwest out to California, right? And they wouldn't allow me to have a base sticker until it passed California emissions, right?
Yeah.
Which is not entirely fair because I'm non-resident military. But Okay, fair enough. Because I didn't have a choice where you don't have a choice where you're stationed at. It's called orders, not invitations. Okay, and you go there and you just got to deal with it. Well, California was crap about emission stuff, and you couldn't get a base sticker until you passed. So here I was, take my junk down. It's got a freaking quadrijet carburetor on it. Oh, that's not the correct model number carburetor. Well, that's off a 307 with a computer controlled off of a 84 Delta 88, and I didn't have another 87 Oldsmobile Cutlass carburetor laying around. Oh, well, you have to change it, sir, or we cannot admit you fail emissions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Oh, yeah, that's not the correct carburetor for this car. So you're saying it's just the same as having a Holly on here? Yep. Okay. So they sent me to this guy. They were called the ref.
The referee. Yep.
The ref looked at me and said, by the letter of law, you're wrong, right? Because the stamp number on the side of the carburetor, even though it could be the exact same calibration, right? Exact same engine, computer number, the whole 9 yards. Because that thing was stamped with a 7 instead of a 3, it was against the law.
Wrong.
And I'm like, what does this have to do with emissions? This has nothing to do with emissions. So that's what, but the ref let me slide. And it just so happens I had the same model. It was like, I want to say it's a J code in the VIN for the engine. And it was like 190 horsepower, 307, which was actually a pretty healthy motor in 87. But it was the same as the Delta 88 and the same as the 87 Oldsmobile Cutlass I had.
Yeah, I've been to ref a few times with when my Volkswagen was 67, but at that time they had to have it smogged. When I got
66 and before, or later, right?
65, yeah, 65 and older. And then as soon as I got rid of that, then they upped it to like, was it 75, right? So I was like, man. And then when I left, even my Ram Charger had to be smogged, and I ended up at the ref with my Ram Charger. It was 77, but it was all stock. It just didn't have the correct distributor for it because it had, but it didn't have it stamped in there. But try to find a 1977 distributor with the right stamping in it. I'm like, dude, come on, man.
I know, and that's the thing I was mad about that freaking Oldsmobile, right? Like, come on. Even if I went and bought a rebuilt one from, back then was a Kragen, it'd be a crapshoot if you got one with the correct stampings on it.
That's right. Yep.
So, all right. Well, let's see. Danny Boyd's saying, you also need to know what the real part looks like. So okay, maybe that's not the correct thing. Mohawk 62 is out here. Thanks, Shane and Dallas.
Yeah,
Another
take it easy,
awesome
man.
live. Have a great night, everyone. All right. So, Clint Street Machines is just showing up here. He's catching us for the last half.
Awesome.
And Kurt Tank has a question. Dallas, should a carburetor built for a marine application, built with different parameters than for an automotive application? My father used 6 Stromberg 97. I'm using a Holly 3310-1 4150. They are different from one. You're going to notice on top of the carburetor, it's got a flame arrestor on it, right? And that's because when you get in the middle of the ocean, it's hard to get a fire truck out there. Right, that thing. What it does is, if it backfires and pops, it doesn't catch the rest of the boat on fire.
Yeah.
Right. It actually will stay right there within that flame arrestor. The other thing is, boats are built not with fuel economy in mind. They're built with
Constant load, because they're always under constant load.
And what you're looking at is it's a balancing act between fuel economy. Generally you'll find on a boat, they don't even have a vacuum advance on the distributor, right? Because they care nothing about fuel economy, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the thing running well, and then being under almost a full throttle load. That's why they don't have a vacuum advance, because it would never come on.
They never come on because there's so much, there's so little manifold vacuum.
Yeah,
'cause it's always under load.
you're pretty much got that thing, let's say 3/4 throttle or more every time that you go out anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the big thing about them, is they probably do have some kind of fuel economy emissions stuff in mind. They're not really emissions, but fuel economy stuff in mind. but it's not what us car guys would think of, because it's only got one speed, really, and you keep it up at around $4,000 or $5,000 the whole day, as long as you're driving it, right? So it probably is a little bit smaller jet and a little bit bigger metering rod, just for when it gets up to $4,000 and it has 2 inches of manifold vacuum. it has some kind of reasonable fuel economy.
Yeah, because on a car, you're only like 40 horsepower going down the road.
Right.
Those things still take like almost 200 foot-pounds of torque to keep going up on plane.
The water is brutal when it comes to eating up fuel. And if you don't think so, every 3 days we would take on like 130,000 gallons of fuel on a warship. Every 3 days, right? So there you go.
Oh, here we go. John Wilburn. Oh, you're not down there yet.
Oh, I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm on my way. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so Danny Boyd's saying 307 were clean engines. The last carbureted American V8. Yeah, I loved it. The little motor was good on fuel. It ran okay. Yes, and this is another thing. Danny Boyd says accelerator pumps aren't as important on marine applications.
No, because it comes up on plane, and that's that. They're still there, but they're not nearly as yeah, they're still there. And also too, I noticed that there's a lot more vents, a lot more the vents that just don't go out into the atmosphere, like for the bowl in the field, because of that exact reason. They have a lot more bowl vents on them that go back into the engine, so that way it burns it up. It doesn't just go into, when you shut it off.
Huh. Oh, and so it doesn't explode. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It won't catch on fire.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay. And Dust Double Garage loves when I rant online or on the live, and I do that sometimes. Sometimes I am out of my mind, so it helps me.
We all are. We mess with cars.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm even worse.
I hate when do you know, like, foresight and insight? You know the difference?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. I believe I'm pretty good at foresight, and I think there is nothing good going to happen unless we fix this manufacturing negativity within the American industry, right? Mm-hmm. You're always going to see super high prices. You're always going to see people out of cash. There's no extra cash flow, because I believe since I've been alive, the United States has gone backwards. Mm-hmm. Since I've been alive, since the 70s. Okay. John Wilburn says, after the live, check out a new short just for Professor P. It will appear after the live. All right. Well, there's our YouTube short. I'll have to, I don't know if I can highlight that. Can I? Maybe? Maybe not. Okay, I cannot. So I'll have to go back and get this somehow. Okay. Big Block 402. Okay. Ever have one of those Edelbrock Q-Jets? I've never owned one. I do know they're based on the Chevrolet Quadrajet, the Chevrolet variant Quadrajet, which if you look, there is 2 different types of variant Quadrajets. If you don't consider the computer-controlled Quadrajet a different variant. What I mean by that is those you would have had 2 different options. And I don't think that would have happened in the later versions of the Quadrajets. But there was always, if you look at the Quadrajet, there's where the fuel filter is at. The fuel either comes in at a 90-degree angle, and that's on a Chevrolet or an Oldsmobile, or the Pontiac and the Buick came in straight and had a fuel filter that was in line that came in straight. The fuel filter housing is the one that dictates the type of carburetor, right? The reason for that is where the fuel pumps are located on the engines. The Pontiac and the Buick are on the driver's side, and the passenger side for the Oldsmobile and the Chevrolet, right? So there's a 2 difference. The Edelbrock variant is based off the Chevrolet Oldsmobile version, and the Edelbrock variant Quadrajet carburetor is the M4 MC carburetor, but they're also, which is the later version, which is the better version with the adjustable part throttle. The problem with them is they're all what they call M-Rod carburetors. Okay, there's nothing really wrong with an M-Rod. The M-Rods are just longer or they're a fatter diameter metering rod. So on normal Q jets, almost all of them ended with 26 thousandths as the tip of the metering rod. Okay. The M-Rod series carburetors, which were primarily on trucks, and the reason why they were primarily on trucks is cars didn't have a carburetor at that point any longer, right? Trucks still carried a carburetor from, like, say, a non-computer controlled carburetor up to like 88.
Yeah.
And then I'm talking, when I say trucks, I'm talking like heavy duty stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like 3/4 ton, 1 ton, maybe more than that. And that's because the emissions requirements for those were a lot looser than the passenger vehicle stuff. Okay. And they all went to like TBI, fuel injection, which is really just a highfalutin carburetor. But those M-Rod carburetors, the tip on those is like 31 thousandths. Okay. And that's when you're at wide open throttle. The tip on that metering rod is 31 thousandths. Now, there's no real difference. All you do is put a bigger jet in there because you have a larger diameter metering rod. But those M-Rod series carburetors got a lot of bad rap because people would mix and match stuff like they're a regular quadjet. But no, you're dealing with an M-Rod where the air bleeds are all for M-Rod. You better have M-Rod metering rods in it, right? You better have the correct size jets in it. And when you say like a regular, like my quadrojets that came on big block Buicks had 73 jets and like say 44 metering rods. Okay. If you got an M-Rod carburetor, it would be like 77 jets and like, well, it'd be, that 31 thousandths, but it'd probably be like a 60 metering rod. Okay. Or maybe even bigger than that at idle. If you mix and match all that stuff, they'd run like crap. And people couldn't figure out why. And it's because that series of carburetor is an M-Rod series carburetor only. The ones from Edelbrock. That's what I'm telling you. So if you're buying anything, make sure you're looking at an M-Rod series carburetor. It's got to have 31 M rods in it, right? And that means it's got the larger tips. If you need some, Stephen Myrick, because I think that's who asked, right? Yeah, Big Block 402. If you need some rods, metering rods for that, I have a boatload of them. Right?
That's why you know so much about them, right?
Yeah. Well, this is something that when I went to Tony's meet and greet that he had in about, when was that? 2020, 2021. He had that first and last and only ever to be meet and greet. There was a guy showed up there. I don't remember what his name was, but he brought an entire Carter carburetor rebuild station with him that he gave to Tony that his dad, I guess, apparently worked at Carter Carburetors.
Wow.
Well, it just so happens that only about a third of that was Carter Carburetors. Carter manufactured quadrojets for Rochester all the way up through essentially the end of the era, right? When Carter stopped existing in, 84? So they, the guy that worked at Carter, he also did quadrojets too. And he had all of the quadrojet parts that are like, I got new old stock stuff like you wouldn't believe. I got 200 floats for quadrojets. Easy, right? I'll never have to buy one again for the rest of my life. But it had this pile of M-Rods in there. And I went through them all and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even have an M-Rod carburetor. Okay. But, yeah, and so, yes, I'm familiar with the Edelbrock quadrojets. If you need somebody to tune on it or you need some help, Stephen Myrick, just hit me up, buddy. There's not a lot of people that will touch an M-Rod carburetor, but it's all math, and it works just like a regular quadrojet, except for it's an M-Rod series. And I'll help you out with it, buddy. I've never had one, and I want to see how they can go. And I believe I may actually own one because before the last time I saw Tony DeFeo, Uncle Tony, he gave me a quadrojet carburetor, and then hasn't returned my phone call since. So I believe it is most likely an M-Rod because it came off of his wrecker. So I don't know. I have never taken it apart. So But he says here, oh, okay, I don't need any parts. I just seen one recently and was curious if it was worth messing with. Great information you have on it. Okay, the Quadrajet carburetor is actually a really good carburetor. A lot of it is that people don't know how to tune on them and wrench on them. And like if you look at the stock Eliminator racers, those are the guys that got it figured out, right?
Yeah.
But if you wanted to get that one, I mean, if you got it for less than $100, you're going to win because it's $22 for a rebuild kit, right? And then we can make it work on almost anything you want to put it on. That's how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And I need to come see you, Shane. I need to pick up that Buick magazine or the Hot Rod magazine.
Sitting right there.
I need to get that Edelbrock carb from you, or that Carter AFB that you had just laying around.
Yeah, 600. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tune that thing for you. You give me your setup, and I'm gonna have it ready to drop it on.
It's 300 Buick bone stock.
Oh, that's simple.
You got the cam profile for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Super simple.
Dust Double Garage says part of the problem with manufacturing around here is that they can't find people who want to work. My company is paying us $1,000 if we bring people into work.
It's true. Yeah, you can't keep them. They won't stay. They'll work for a little while. They'll be on their phone, just constantly working like, and then they bounce. That's it.
I don't know if it's that because, well, I don't look for a job anymore. I don't go out of my way to look for a job. I have a retirement check coming from the Navy, so, but yeah, maybe that's part of the problem. But I think I earned it. I've spent, I got literally out of 23 years in the Navy, I had less than 7 stateside, right? So I'm sticking around. Okay, so let's see. Oh, Danny Boyd says, my former future boss's grandpa was the president of Carter Carburetors.
What?
Dude, that's cool, man.
That's
See if he's
good.
got some neat Carter stuff that's historic.
Yeah, just laying around. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Danny Boyd also says Enron series. No, I'm sorry. I'm probably not saying it well. I'm not enunciating it well. M, like the letter M as in Mike, Rod. ROD, right? That's the metering rods in it are M series rods. The early ones, like the very early 60s ones, are K rods. Then you have, B rods. The very early series ones are B rods. And then you go to a later version, which is 75 to essentially 84 on a production car, right? Or, 84. And then they went to the computer-controlled carburetors on everything. Yeah. So that changed to a CCC, computer-controlled carburetor. But the 75 to 84 was a K-series rod. And then on the pickup trucks primarily, from 84 on, they had the M, which is M as in Mike, rod series carburetor. And there's still a M4 MC, which is the same nomenclature. Like the Quadrajets, if you're not familiar, 4MC is like the early ones. And then you have the M4 MC, which is the 75 and later. And then there was some different variations. Like there was a manual choke one in there, and it had M4 MV, or I don't know. So it was all. You got to be a real Quadrajet nerd to know that stuff off the top of your head. Let's see. Dick Dastardly says Dollar General closed in Renovo, Pennsylvania, and they can't get any workers.
Yeah.
Man, I wonder how that is. Where's all these people's coming from? Or not coming from? Yeah, I got... So, Dust Double Garage says I can get pictures of the old Carter building here in St. Louis. Yeah, that was their headquarters. The manufacturing headquarters was St. Louis. It's the perfect spot. It's right in the middle of the country, right? It was genius for them to be there. And I still don't understand how Carter went out of business. I'm assuming it had a lot to do with that thermoquad. And it wasn't so much the first 3-4 years of the thermoquad. It was the last 10 where they would if you're unfamiliar with the thermoquad carburetor, the Mopar variant, and it wasn't the Mopar carburetor. Mopar used Carter carbs because it was a made in America carburetor manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
Just like Rochester was, and it's based out of Rochester, New York. It's the Rochester Quadrajet. It's not the GM Quadrajet. The Thermoquad fixed what was wrong with the Quadrajet, which was the carburetor in the Quadrajet carburetor is made entirely of aluminum, and it would gain heat and it would boil the fuel in the bowl. Right?
It's in the center.
Right.
You know, it's a tiny little bowl.
And the Quadrajet would run out of fuel under full throttle because it's in the center of the carburetor between all four bowls, right? Well, all four barrels. And it's this little bowl that probably holds about 4 ounces of gasoline. And when it's wide open throttle, some of those engines that they were producing would absolutely vaporize that 4 ounces of gasoline and couldn't keep up. The pump couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Thermoquad was built to replace that because it was based originally on the Carter AFB, which has 2 external bowls.
Yeah,
it has one for each side, right? And a float for each side. And each side of the carburetor, that's what was unique about the Carter. It's technically just 2 two-barrel carburetors, and with the metering rods attached is really what you're looking at, right? All the barrels are attached and the metering rods are attached. But if you look at, and you just took that thing and went right down, put it on a bandsaw and went right down the middle of it, it's technically just 2 two-barrel carburetors. They're both the barrels are the same size, and they're probably 350 CFM, 250 CFM, 2 barrels, 2 of them. But and the original ones were only like 500 CFM, I think is what they were, right?
Yeah.
But when the Thermoquad came out, because the Quadrajet had that spread bore, and the spread bore is genius because whoever came up with that is a really smart person. What it is you drive around on 250 CFM, and when you stand on it, that sucker opens the gates of hell. And if you've ever heard one come on, Thermoquad and the Quadrajet sound the same.
Yeah.
It like birds flying are not safe. Small children
They get sucked right in.
sucked right in, man. The gates of hell. But it sounds so good. And coming up, there's 2 things I got to update. One, I said on either last week or the week before, I was going to do an Electra 22.5 hour live, right? Where I was going to swap a motor out in this nice looking 72 Electra. Well, that's probably not going to happen because the dude has not returned phone calls. So he's ghosting me now since the motor's done. The other thing is I've gotten pretty fed up with the EFI on the Ford truck washing down the cylinders with gas or gassing down my oil or getting 8 miles a gallon sometimes and then 22 the next. And it's pissed me off to the point where I'm pulling it off and I'm going to put a freaking Quadrajet on this thing.
Beautiful.
And it took me almost a year and a half to find an intake manifold that would work, but I found one. I'm going to use it, put a Quadrajet on that Ford truck, and I'm going to have the secondaries opening up. Wah! Wah! On the 393 Windsor.
You know what I want? The one intake I want to try on my Slant 6 before I give up all the carburetors is that there's an intake that runs 2 of the Holley 1920 style carbs, which is like the stock Slant 6 one. But it's one that runs the front 3 and then one that runs the back 3. It's really a cool. I saw it on some video, and then it has a small little crossover tube to equalize pressure. But basically, you're running 2 of the stock style carburetors on it.
That's how I was thought. You remember seeing the Ford Autolights where it was 8 barrels in a row?
Yeah.
I believe that carburetor was set up to be one individual barrel, and you could literally have a 2 barrel, 3 barrel, 4 barrel, and you just buy those and put them in succession. What would be cool is if they had some kind of groove, like you just slid them in next to each other and then hooked up the linkage.
Yeah.
That would have been the ticket, man.
Yeah, I was thinking if I could do an intake manifold, I would get 6 of those Holley 1920 carbs. There would be 2 of them that would run basically the front end at half throttle, and then when you went full throttle, the other four would basically open up. So that way it would be, they'd all be stacked there, but they would all be in conjunction. But you'd run basically on the two the whole time, and then when you floored it, it would open up all six of them.
Huh.
It's just something to think about.
I do love a carburetor because if you think about it, everyone says electronic fuel injection replaced the dinosaur, which was the carburetor. The carburetor was around from probably about 1860 or 70 to they're still making them today. Yeah. Who Shane works for just made a new variant of a carburetor, right?
Yeah, and it works awesome. Works bitchin'.
Well, think about it. Okay. Electronic fuel injection, fuel pump, $300. Carbureted fuel pump, $30. Right? A tune for your laptop-centric EFI, right? $500-$600.
Yeah.
Okay. Injectors for your EFI. There's generally one per each cylinder. You're looking at $200 to $600 for injectors, right? Carburetor, the whole entire carburetor, tune, the whole damn thing, $500.
Yeah.
Right?
And a little bit of know-how, a little bit of time, and it works just fine.
Okay, here's another thing that I'll bring up that I have. All right, this has just dawned on me the past 2 days. My buddy and I were talking about it. He said, hey, when was the last time you heard of a carburetor ruining an engine? Right?
Yeah.
EFI, though, you get one bad injector, and it will ruin your engine.
Yeah,
one bad injector. An EFI system is literally one tiered system. A carburetor is a dual tiered system, okay, especially a 4-barrel. Or a 2-barrel is a single tier, but a 4-barrel is essentially a dual tier, 2-tier system, because your first tier is your primaries that you drive around on, right? Mm-hmm. And they get bad gas mileage or, whatever if you got it out of tune, but it's usually like small CFM. You're only looking at, 400 CFM or something at the most. And then you get into secondaries, and if the secondaries are tuned all wrong, well, it's only open, probably 1/10 of the time you're driving the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really have a chance to ruin the engine. But the EFI is a single tier system. You get one bad injector, done. Right? So I never really thought of it like that. And the carburetor's the one that's supposed to be archaic. Is it archaic because people can work on it at home?
Yeah, that's what they're trying to get rid of.
I think so.
Here it is. Hey, thank you. That's exactly right. There is Offenhauser makes it, and it's part number is 5041. Basically, it's an Offenhauser. It's got the dual carbs on it. That's exactly what I was looking for.
What you talking about? Oh, for the Slant 6?
Yeah.
Has anybody ever put cross-draft carbs on a Slant 6?
Yeah, there's a video on there where someone in Australia put some Webers on it, and it made some good power. After this, I'll send you the link for it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Wow, it's already past 2 hours.
Oh crap! Yeah, that's my fault.
I didn't even notice that.
Max Switch Dick Dashley says, I want that cross-ram that has 4 carbs. Looks really cool. Fab Race Mod Repeat says, we've had people show up drunk or stoned for interviews.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the thing.
Dude. Really?
Yeah.
Responsibility is a thing of the past. Let's see. Fab Race Mod Repeat. B-Rods, M-Rods. Sound like a bunch of sports ball players. Yeah, I guess so. Oh my God. Doug Narden says, we had a lady in our office show up to work on her first day of work drunk.
Wow.
Man, responsibility is just not a human thing anymore.
I guess not, man. I guess not.
Well, it's a good thing that didn't happen with a nurse, right? Okay. John Wilburn's digging at some Dust Devil Brian here. I don't know what gets Dust Devil Brian more excited, Phoebe Cates or the orange paper. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Well, that's. I guess we're gonna call that a Wednesday night. So.
Yeah, it went by fast, man.
Yeah, it did go by fast. I was actually running right past 2 hours, and I'm gonna keep on going.
Yeah,
So,
I was actually just happened to look up. And I was like, "Whoa, it's already passed." So
yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in. We brought you another Wednesday night, and hopefully many more to come.
absolutely, these are fun. I like these. This is something to look forward to.
Yeah, I do too. I enjoyed. I wish we had more questions. So make sure you think up some cool questions. And next week, Shane and I will have a topic, and we'll go over some plugs or something. How to read a plug. That's what we need to do.
You know what? That's a good idea. I actually have some that I'll bring in because I'm still tuning my.
Well, I don't know
my
how
fuel
we're going to
injection.
be able to put them up to the camera.
I can go full John Wilburn.
I don't know if you're going to be able to do that well enough on a plug.
Well, I can zoom in on it, so that we can.
You can on the strap just to see where it's burning, but it's going to be very hard to do down in the ceramic on the electrode.
I'll see what I can do. Let me see what I can get.
Alrighty, cool.
Yeah.
Well, until next Wednesday,
All right.
this is
Thanks.
Mr. Rodder's Neighborhood. I'm out of here.
Shane for Slant Daily Garage. You guys take it easy.
All right. We'll see you all next Wednesday.